Hello, welcome to Learn English with Technology podcast series, episode 13. Today, we're diving into something that might make you raise an eyebrow.
Hmm.
At first, turning your car into a language learning lab.
Okay.
Sounds a bit wild,
Bad.
right? But stick with us, because we're going to unpack some seriously cool research from Professor Sarah Wong.
Uh-huh.
She's found that all that time we spend behind the wheel can actually become a secret weapon for mastering a new language.
It's funny how we often assume learning has to happen in a classroom surrounded by textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
But your brain is always picking up on things, making
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah.
Professor Wong's work is all about tapping into that natural learning power, even in unexpected places like our cars.
Okay, so let's get into it. Professor Wong actually stumbled onto this idea while trying to learn Japanese herself.
Mm-hmm.
Traditional methods weren't really clicking,
Uh-huh.
but she noticed she was picking up words and phrases during her commute. That sparked a deep dive into the psychology of why cars might be such effective learning environments.
One of the key things she found is that driving puts our brains into a state called the flow state,
Right.
which is like this sweet spot where we're focused but also receptive to new information. Think about it. You've probably driven somewhere and arrived without even really remembering the trip. Your brain was on autopilot, handling the driving, which leaves space for other things to sink in.
Yeah, totally. So while our brains are focused on the road, there's this other part that's primed to absorb new language, almost like subliminal learning.
Exactly. And here's something even cooler. Professor Wong's research showed that stress hormones actually drop by a whopping 40% when people practice languages in their cars compared to a classroom.
Wow, 40%. That's a game changer. No wonder some of us freeze up in language classes.
Yeah.
All that pressure to perform just gets in the way.
The car is like this judgment-free zone.
Yeah.
You can experiment with sounds, repeat phrases a million times, make mistakes, and nobody's there to make you feel self-conscious.
I remember feeling so embarrassed in French class when I'd butcher a pronunciation. But in the car, that's just me, my audio. And I can be as loud and silly as I need to be. It's liberating.
Right. It lets you focus on the actual learning, which is what matters.
Right.
Now, there's also this fascinating idea of environmental anchoring. Professor Wong found that our brains naturally link locations with learning milestones. So if you're consistently practicing while driving down a particular road, your brain will start to associate that route with Spanish or French or whatever you're learning.
Okay.
Years later, driving that same road might actually trigger those memories
Right.
and help you recall what you learned.
So it's like building these mental bookmarks along our daily commutes. How cool is that? And then there's this whole other concept of the driving brain advantage, which sounds so sci-fi to me.
It does sound futuristic, but it's all about how our brains function in this semi-automated state while driving.
Yeah.
Think about how you can remember song lyrics without even trying. That same mechanism can be harnessed for learning a language.
So while our brains are handling the driving, there's all this extra capacity for absorbing vocabulary or grammar rules.
And Professor Wong's latest research suggests that the rhythm of driving, the consistent pace, the familiar routes, creates ideal conditions for memory formation. Students are sometimes absorbing grammar patterns more easily while driving than they are during focused study sessions, which is pretty mind-blowing.
Okay, so now we're starting to understand WHY cars are such surprisingly effective learning spaces. It's the flow state, the stress reduction, the environmental anchoring, and this driving brain advantage all working together. But how do we actually transform our vehicles into these high-tech language labs?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Professor Wong has developed some incredibly practical strategies that anyone can use, no matter what kind of car you have or how tech-savvy you are.
Okay.
And the best part is it all starts with something we already have, our car's audio system.
Okay, so we're talking about more than just popping in a language learning CD. What's the secret sauce here?
It's about optimizing your sound for language, not music. Professor Wong calls this finding the acoustic sweet spot, and it's surprisingly simple. Most car audio systems are set up to emphasize bass, but we want to bring out those crystal clear spoken sounds.
So what kind of adjustments are we talking about?
You only need to tweak 3 basic settings.
Okay.
The magic formula is treble at +2, mid-range at +1, and bass at -1. This creates what Professor Wong calls the human voice sweet spot, making it easier to hear the nuances of English, especially those consonants and vowels that can be tricky.
I never thought about fine-tuning my car audio like this. But it makes sense if I want to master English pronunciation. I need to hear those sounds clearly.
Right. And you'd be surprised how much of a difference this simple tweak can make, especially when you're trying to pick up on the subtle differences between similar sounds.
Okay, I'm sold on the acoustic sweet spot. Yeah. What's next in our car-to-language lab makeover?
Well, once you have the sound dialed in, it's all about creating the ideal learning setup inside your car. And Professor Wong has some really interesting ideas about how to do that, starting with something she calls the triangle of learning.
Ooh, a triangle.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
It's all about the positioning of your ears, your device, whether it's your phone or a tablet, and your speakers. Imagine an invisible triangle inside your car with those three things as the points.
Okay.
They should be roughly an equal distance apart.
So it's not just about having my phone within reach. It's about this spatial relationship between me, the device, and the sound.
Exactly. It might seem like a small detail, but Professor Wong's research found that this setup reduces listening fatigue, especially during long drives.
And less fatigue means I can learn for longer periods, which obviously translates to better results.
Now, beyond the triangle, even your car seat position matters. Professor Wong recommends what she calls the alert but relaxed posture.
Okay, so not slouching, but not stiff as a board either. I can see how posture would influence my focus.
Think of it as finding that sweet spot where you're upright enough to stay engaged, but still comfortable enough to relax and absorb the material.
It's like the Goldilocks zone of posture.
Speaking of Goldilocks zones, did you know there's also an ideal temperature range for learning? Professor Wong's research found it's between 68 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit.
So I need to adjust my thermostat before I even hit play on my language lesson. It's amazing how much goes into creating the perfect learning environment.
These little things make a big difference. Now let's talk storage.
Okay.
Where do we put all our learning materials in this high-tech car lab?
Right.
Professor Wong calls her system Reach and Teach.
Uh-huh.
It's about turning those empty door pockets, the sun visor, even the cup holders, into mini learning centers.
It's like Marie Kondo meets language learning.
Yeah.
So those neglected spaces become prime real estate for my language learning tools.
Exactly.
Uh,
Think vocabulary cards in the door pocket,
Hmm?
a grammar guide tucked into the sun visor, maybe even pronunciation flashcards in the cup holder.
I'm already picturing my car organized like this. But it's not just about cramming stuff in right.
Hmm.
There's a method to this storage madness.
Professor Wong encourages something called zone mapping.
Okay.
You designate certain areas for specific tasks.
Mhm.
Maybe the driver's side is your speaking zone, the passenger side is for listening, and the rearview mirror area becomes your pronunciation checkpoint.
It's like creating these visual and spatial associations within the car. I can see how that would reinforce what I'm learning.
And don't forget about lighting. Professor Wong's research highlights the importance of natural light for alertness and focus.
Yeah.
Try to maximize that without creating glare, especially if you're driving at night.
Okay, so we've got our seating temperature, audio storage, and even lighting dialed in. My car is physically prepped and ready to transform. Now let's bring in the tech.
This is where things get really fun. Professor Wong has made it incredibly easy to integrate your phone or tablet into this setup.
Okay.
She calls it the 3-tap revolution. 3 taps, and you're immersed in a personalized learning session.
3 taps. That's it. It sounds so much easier than fumbling with chords or complicated menus.
Exactly. Her research shows that making things easy like this boosts how often people actually practice, and that's key for any kind of learning.
I'm all about making things easy. So what kind of tech magic can we do with just 3 taps?
Well, for starters, there's something called Bluetooth bootstrapping. It uses your car's Bluetooth to do way more than just play music. You can set up smart triggers so your language learning apps automatically launch based on your driving conditions.
Hold on. So my car could start my vocabulary practice when I hit the highway, or switch to pronunciation drills when I'm stuck in traffic.
That's the idea. It's about letting the tech work for you.
It's like having a language learning co-pilot who knows exactly what I need at any given moment. What else can we automate?
How about controlling your lessons?
Yeah.
Using both English and the language you're learning.
Yeah.
Professor Wong calls it dual language commands.
So I could say, play next Spanish lesson
Eh.
in English, and then switch to saying siguiente lección in Spanish.
Yep. It's convenient, and it helps you practice speaking the language you're learning, building confidence along the way.
It's like sneaking in those extra learning moments throughout my drive. Now, I'm someone who's super picky about audio quality. Can we really get a good learning experience in a car?
Professor Wong is way ahead of you. She found that poor audio quality can make it hard to understand. So she developed something called dynamic audio adaptation.
Dynamic audio adaptation, what is that?
Your phone analyzes your car's ambient noise and adjusts the audio for clarity. It can even fine-tune specific frequencies to make voices pop over road noise.
Wait, so even if I'm driving on a noisy highway or in the rain, I can still hear my lessons clearly?
You got it. It's about maximizing learning, no matter what's happening outside. But here's the thing about traditional language learning apps. They usually follow a set path.
Yeah.
What if you need something different depending on your drive?
Yeah, some days my commute is 20 minutes, others it's over an hour. How can I plan for that?
Professor Wong's system is designed to be flexible. It's called smart sequencing.
Uh-huh.
It might switch to listening exercises in heavy traffic, pronunciation practice on open roads, and vocabulary review during stop-and-go situations.
So it adapts to my driving conditions. That's so smart.
Exactly. And it keeps things interesting. Now I know what you're thinking. Data usage and battery life.
Yeah.
Professor Wong has us covered there, too, with something called progressive loading.
Okay.
The system preloads lessons based on your usual driving patterns, so you have offline access, even without a signal.
No more data overages or that dreaded low battery warning in the middle of a lesson. I'm in.
And what about those times when you get interrupted, a phone call, GPS directions, or you just need to pull over?
Right.
Professor Wong calls her solution interrupt resilience. The system bookmarks your spot and creates smart resume points.
So I can pick up right where I left off, even after a Starbucks run.
Precisely. No more frustration or wasted time.
This is blowing my mind. It seems Professor Wong has thought of everything.
She's pretty incredible. She's even found that some types of learning work better at certain times of day. Mornings might be ideal for grammar, while evenings are better for listening comprehension.
It's like she's figured out how to hack our brains for optimal learning. But what about those unpredictable things that happen on the road? Like sudden weather changes. Can my car language lab handle that? Can my car language lab handle that?
That's where the weather wisdom protocol comes in.
Okay.
Professor Wong has found that different weather conditions actually create unique learning opportunities. For example, rain can enhance your ability to hear subtle sound differences.
Wait, so rainy days are good for pronunciation practice. I always thought they were the worst for everything.
Think of it this way. The rain creates a sort of white noise that can actually help those tricky sounds stand out. One of her students even mastered the English the sound thanks to practicing during Seattle's rainy season.
That is so cool. I'm seeing rainy days in a whole new light.
And it's not just rain. Cold weather, believe it or not, also helps with pronunciation because cold air carries sound more clearly. Professor Wong calls them crystal clear conditions.
So winter driving is perfect for mastering those tricky sounds. It's amazing how we can turn these weather challenges into advantages.
Professor Wong has even developed specific audio settings for different weather conditions. She calls them climate compensation controls. They ensure you always have the best listening experience, rain or shine.
Wow, this is all incredibly impressive. But I have to ask, isn't it dangerous to focus on language learning while driving?
Safety is absolutely paramount. All of Professor Wong's research emphasizes that learning should never come at the expense of safe driving.
Right, of course.
The idea is to integrate learning seamlessly into your drive without creating any distractions.
That makes sense. And it brings us to another important element, family.
Yeah.
Can we turn our car language lab into a shared learning space for everyone?
Absolutely.
Really?
In fact, Professor Wong's latest research has shown that family participation can actually accelerate learning. She calls it the family synergy effect, and it's pretty remarkable.
Family synergy effect. Tell me more.
Imagine turning those everyday car rides into mini language immersion experiences where everyone gets involved from your youngest child to your oldest grandparent.
So we're not just talking about kids in the back seat listening to language tapes.
Yeah.
We're talking about actively engaging everyone in the learning process.
Exactly. Professor Wong suggests creating what she calls role rotation dynamics. Each family member has a specific role in the learning process. Maybe one person is the vocabulary master, another is the grammar guru, and someone else is the pronunciation police.
I love that. It turns car time into quality time and helps everyone learn together.
And it can lead to stronger communication and bonding outside the car, too. It's not just about learning the language, it's about connecting as a family.
I like that.
Yeah.
But what about those times when someone needs to focus on individual practice?
Yeah.
I can imagine it getting a bit chaotic with everyone chiming in.
Professor Wong has a solution for that too. It's called family privacy zones. You use certain cues, a special phrase, a hand signal, to indicate when someone needs quiet time for solo practice.
So it's like creating mini learning sanctuaries within the car. I love it. It seems Professor Wong has considered every possible angle.
She really has. And we've only just scratched the surface of all the amazing things she's discovered.
I'm sure.
In our next segment, we're going to dive even deeper into how to tailor your learning to your specific driving patterns and routines.
Okay, I can't wait to hear more. This whole concept of turning our cars into language learning labs is just blowing my mind. Who knew that something as simple as our daily commute could be such a powerful opportunity for growth?
It's pretty incredible. And remember, even if you implement just a few of these strategies, you'll be well on your way to transforming your car into a language learning powerhouse.
That's such a great point. A huge thank you to you, our expert, for sharing your incredible knowledge with us today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned a ton about how to turn your car into an English learning powerhouse. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave us a comment below. We'd love to hear about your language learning journeys. Until next time, happy learning.